touchscreen programming. Power up the control box. This is the first screen you'll come to. This screen allows you to automatically start the robot. This button, Auto Plus, allows you to pick a mode. It's a one-shot deal. We can either choose espresso, V mode, random or cross mode, systematic, and once again espresso. This button's a one-shot deal, and it will default to whatever the settings would be set up in the actual setup for the auto start. If we hit the back button, the original screen. Now from the screen, if you hit radio, this will bring you to a screen that obviously resembles the remote control, and in fact can be used as a remote control. You have your number 1 button, your forward, reverse, left, right. The stop button, if the robot's moving and in the water, will stop the robot wherever you guide it to, and the pump will keep pumping. It's nice to clean drains this way, or if you had a pile of debris somewhere in the pool, you can just sit in one spot and pump. Obviously, that's the number 2 button. Now, if we go back again, bring us to the original screen, we can hit the info screen, which tells us the infrared sensors on the left. This particular unit is showing the number 1 and number 2 sensors are detecting walls. It happens to be that the unit itself is up against a wall, and that's why that's showing that. If I have the machine with me, if I put my hand in front of the number 3 sensor, you can see that light flashing. It's just, again, indicating a wall. The next screen shows the robot is not in the water as it's sitting on top of the water. Third is the pump, showing 0 amps, robot is not running. Left motor, right motor, gyro, and angle setting. So if we hit the gear one more time, this will allow us to go into the actual software so we can program. The code is always the same. It's 5695. We'll hit the check mark. And again, we're on the Magellan 24. This is the software program. This should only be used by either certified technicians or with the assistance of a technician. It's not, meant to be used by end users. And I would highly recommend, unless you are knowledgeable of this, that you don't go into these settings without instruction, which again is an informational screen. If the robot was running, it would show the pump amps, the angle, left motor, right motor. Hit OK. This shows the infrared sensors. And this could check the pump. If you had a pump issue and you wanted to check it, if we hit this P, you might be able to hear it when I hit it. It will run the pump for a few seconds and then shut right down because it's not in water. So we'll hit OK. And it reverts back to the screen you were just in, always. So we'll hit M+ again. This allows us to choose a language. We hit OK. This is set on English. We can scroll up to German, Spanish, Italian, Netherlands, Korean, Russian, French, and then back to English. We'll hit OK. We will validate that English is our choice. Again, it goes back to the screen you were just in. Diverse robot is something we do not use. I would not recommend going into this screen unless instructed. by the manufacturer or again, a CES certified technician. We'll go in, it gives us the model, serial number, order number. It shows the card that's in here as far as the software, the sensors, and then we validate that. So M plus, again, a code. The code would only be used if we had a power surge or for whatever reason it just diverted back. The telltale sign on this, if you turn your robot on and it's speaking French, that would indicate that there was some sort of power issue, and it reverts back to the factory settings, which are in French. So if we needed to reset it, we would give you a code based on the serial number of the circuit board. You would enter that 4-digit code here, hit OK, and you should get a check mark because there's no code entered here. If I hit OK, it gives me an error and it goes back to code. So that is something, you know, again, we only use in certain situations. Maintenance, this gives you the hours, how long the machine's run, how long the remote control was used, how long the pump's on. Again, more for sensors. These are the infrared sensors. We hit OK. You always want infrared with. Infrared delay, this is set at half a second. I personally like to use 0.3 seconds, but this can be changed, again, based on the basin of the pool and the sides. So we'll keep it at 0.5. Angle sensor width. Again, this is for dive wells and steep slopes. Water mass missing capture is width. This allows the machine to know it's in water. So if you never want to put it without, because then there is a chance that the pump will run outside of water and you could burn the pump out. Angle setting, preset from the factory at 30 degrees. If, for instance, you had a dive well that the slope was 40 degrees, we would change this setting to 10 degrees above the steepest slope. So if you had a 40 degree, we would change this to 50 degrees. It allows the motors to torque and climb easier out of the dive well. Angle coefficient's always 100%. And then again, it's going to ask you to validate your choices. And again, it goes back to sensors. Next screen is the pump. Always preset at 100%. We can lower that based on certain situations, but as a rule, 100% is where we like to see the pumps run. Again, we validate that. Remote control. This just allows you to change the frequency on the remote. They come preset at 1. If you had multiple units on the same site, you would want to change one of the remotes to, we can go up to 4. So this is, like I said, preset at 1. If you had 2 units, you would have one set at 1 and one set at 2. Just so we're not controlling 2 robots with 2 different remote controls. It gets a little screwy. So we'll hit OK. Remote control, this is 90 seconds. If you hit forward or reverse, the robot will run for 90 seconds without stopping. So kind of a standard setting, not a big deal. And we validate that. Auto start, this is where we program your go buttons, your remote control to the modes that we've chosen. So we'll hit OK. Remote control day button. This one's set at systematic. We can change it to V mode, systematic and random, systematic and wall, or none, then random, random floor and wall, and then back to systematic. We'll keep it there. We'll hit OK. This is set as a 0 delay. We can go up to 48 hours on delays. The delays are set in minutes. Most people keep these zeroed out. if we set up, for instance, a 3-hour delay, and someone on site happens to hit the button that was set at delay, the robot will just sit there for 3 hours. So you have to keep that in mind when you set it up, and have your staff remember that certain buttons were set with delay or without. So again, most people we deal with do not use a delay, but some people do. So anyway, espresso is always no. This remote control night button, systematic. Again, we can change this to any of the modes we choose. Hit OK. This particular mode is set up at a 3-hour delay. As you can see, if you wanted to zero out, you always go over under the number and then up to 0 or the number you want to set it at. We'll zero this out. Hit OK. Espresso again is always no. The day box button, which is the control box, the first go on the left of the screen. This one's set at random. Again, we can change it to whatever we choose. Hit OK for your choice. This is set at 0 delays. Espresso, again, always no. Electric night button, this one's set at systematic. And from the factory is set at a 3-hour delay. Again, we can change it, we can up it, we can zero it, whatever your particular situation is called for. Espresso, no. Validate it. Back to auto start. Oop, didn't want to do that. And plus, so random. This is how we tweak the individual modes. Hit OK. Gap between lines at 0.50, standard. We can tighten it or make it wider if you for quicker cleaning, but again, the standard is 0.50. The maximum beeline time is 300 seconds. On this particular mode, random, which I refer to as cross mode, you want to keep that pretty high. This is also where in different modes we would set up virtual walls, but you cannot set up virtual walls in random due to the way the pattern works. Random walls do not work in this mode. Wall-based brush time, 0.3 seconds, that's good. Wall climbing time, we always go to 0. These units are not necessarily designed to climb walls, even though they can. Depending on the mode, it doesn't work well, so we always zero it out. Gyro frequency is 1. That's pretty standard. On oddly shaped pools, we might change that, but again, only do this if instructed by a certified technician. Wall wedging time, 0.3 seconds, again standard. The random K-cal duration, or K calculation, I'd say, at 20, we never want to change that. Then we validate the choices we made. The next would be systematic, which again, systematic is like mowing your lawn. You start from either right going left or left going right, and it literally looks like you're mowing a piece of grass. So I'll hit OK. Cycle length, 100 minutes. I usually bump them up to 300 because the unit's going to stop when it hits the last wall anyway, so the more time you put on there, it just, if you set it too low and it's not finished, it's going to stop, and then realistically you're going to call me and say how come it stopped. But so we like to keep that high. Starting direction right, you start the unit in the left corner and it's going to move from left to right. Change it to left, put it in the right corner, it's going to move from right to left. Beeline time is 300 seconds, again a standard setting. If you had a bulkhead or some sort of obstruction that you'd want it to stop before it hit it, we would set this based on timing out the unit. So if you started from a wall and you had a bulkhead, say that the unit took 40 seconds to reach, we'll set this at 40 seconds, and that sets up a virtual wall where the robot thinks there's a wall there and will stop in reverse direction. Same as the beeline time backwards. If we're doing virtual walls, you want to keep those two consistent. Wall-based brush time is 1 second. That's a little high. Sorry. So we'll get rid of that 1 second and make it 0.3, which is what I use as my standard. Wall away. So once it hits the wall, the first pass out, it will back up for 1.7 seconds. At that point, this is a gap between lines. So after the 1.7, it makes a 45-degree angle, comes out another 2.6 seconds. This gives us a little overlap. We can tighten this, or make it a wider pattern, but then you're going to have lines where it misses. These are pretty standard settings. And then wall contact, once it goes out on that 45, it squares up, goes in reverse, and re-squares up to the wall. Again, these are pretty standard. We can change these depending on the shape of the bottom of the pool and certain variations that might happen. But as a rule, these are pretty standard and they work well. Maximum line numbers, again, I always go high because the robot will stop when it knows it's done anyway. So the infrared cycle ends with, this is where as it hits the same wall twice, it knows it's completed its mode, so it will stop, so you want to keep that with. Gyro frequency, again, unless otherwise, told to change it, is always 1. Wall wedging time, again, 1 second is a little too much. I like to go with the 0.3. Okay. And then again, we validate it. V mode, it's literally a V, where we can control the angle of the V. Cycle length, bump that up a little bit. Maximum beeline time, again in V mode, you keep it high. It's going to stop when it hits a wall anyway. Wall-based brush time, 0.5 is okay. Again, had an odd-shaped pull, we might change that to 4 or 5. Wall wedging, that's on the reverse part of it, is 0.5. Starting direction right. On the V mode, it doesn't matter because we can make several passes. So, we can start right, we can start left, but the fact is it's going to make more than one pass typically. So, lines number. This one is set at 6. You could do just 1, you could do 8, you could do as many as you want. And this is the amount of passes, so we're going to keep this at 6. So the first pass, the V on the top of the V, is at 5 degrees. What typically happens is we increase steadily, and it just makes a little quicker cleaning, you get better coverage. So line 2 comes up to 6, line 3 comes up to 7, line 5 up to 9, we missed one there. Line 6 is at 10 degrees, and again, we validate. Espresso we do not use. Factory settings, this is to default back to factory settings. It happens, but it's something, again, unless you're a CES technician or being told to do so, this is something an end user should not go into. So it'll give us a factory reset. We're not going to do that, so we'll hit escape. Regulation. Again, this is a screen that only a CES or Hexagon certified technician should go into. It has to do with amperages on motors, pump, gyro frequencies, and it's something you don't want to play with. Speed, this adjusts the speed of the Roma. This would be low velocity. Normal velocity 38, that's a little bit low, but it depends on the surface of the pool and how much time you want to take to clean the pool. The only problem with this is if you go too fast, it tends to make a wave out in front of the robot and you'll be pushing stuff away more than you'll be picking up. Fast velocity, this is strictly for the remote control function. Very fast velocity, 70%. Rotational speed should always be at 50. And we validate. Security, not a screen anybody needs to deal with again, unless a CES or Hexagon certified technician instructs you to do so. And then we're back to the Magellan 24 screen. And that is pretty much the setup that we do. Obviously, there's a lot of parameters in there that can be tweaked or changed depending on the unique situation of your pool. But again, this video is intended for technicians and not end users. So please keep that in mind.